It's hour 2 of Overdrive on this Wednesday afternoon. Aaron Korolnek in for Brian Hayes with Jamie Noodles McLennan, Jeff the O-Dog O'Neill. Canada, Sweden tonight at 8 o'clock. Patrick Sharp, an Olympic gold medalist in 2014, will join us in about 5 minutes. Are you guys nostalgic about great Canadian sporting moments? Like, would you ever go back and watch the Golden Goal or anything like that? Jose Batista's bat flip. Because this morning, getting ready for today's show, I was looking at some great Canadian hockey moments, whether it be the World Juniors or
but how do you do
the
that?
Olympics.
Like, do you just go on YouTube and Google like great? A lot of people do that, man. Whether it's like golf rounds, goalie saves,
golf rounds. Yes, that's something I do a little bit more than.
There's a rabbit hole
moments
available on YouTube that is extraordinary for sporting stuff that you like. Yeah. Anything you want, man, it's there.
Well, I do have a question, though, AK. You said the bat flip. Like, was that iconic?
Oh, the bat flip was very iconic. Now, the Golden Goal, I think.
Win.
Yes, but you're right. But at the moment, I think that's a where were you moment. So was the Golden Goal. I remember exactly where I was for the Golden Goal. I was in fourth year university up in London. The party we had after that night, oh, my goodness. Like, the streets were completely jammed, as if the Raptors won the NBA title back in 2019.
The streets were jammed at your university after Sidney Crosby scored.
Absolutely. Do you think, on that subject, let's say Canada beats the Americans Saturday night, does anybody take to the streets to celebrate?
I don't know.
I don't.
Where is that Saturday? Is it in Montreal?
It is in Montreal, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
you mean this Saturday or next Saturday when the finals happen?
The final on Thursday. Yeah, let's say, Saturday Canada plays the Americans, and they play Finland on Monday at 1 o'clock, and the final goes on Thursday. I don't know, Canada, the USA, people down on King Street West will be liquored up watching the game, pouring out on the streets.
I don't think so, man. I don't think it'll have the pouring out on the streets effect.
Yeah,
I think as knowledgeable as Canadian fans are, I do think they understand that this is some sort of exhibition. It's not the Olympics. It's not a World Cup. Dude, I don't even know if people would pour out in the streets for a World Cup victory. You were in Toronto when Marchand scored that goal in that World Cup of hockey thing. I don't think people poured out in the streets.
Yeah, I can barely. But that was in Toronto too, right? That was at Air Canada Center. This is, of course, different. Montreal tonight, Boston. That's an interesting question. I guess a lot of it just depends on the investment of people into this tournament, which I think when it rolls around, when Saturday night rolls around, I think tonight, yes, it's the Swedes. Maybe the rivalry, of course, is not as great. The importance of the game is basically the same when it comes to winning the tournament. But Saturday, man, I think it's going to be something special, like something very special in Montreal. Yeah. And I think
there's going to be some build-up and some buzz in Montreal.
But you also, I mean, they'll pour out onto the streets because Montreal celebrates their team and their country well. And there'll be a bunch of booze bags out there acting up, regardless. To me, I feel like I just don't know it'll translate. I don't know if in Edmonton, maybe if McDavid scores it, but in Calgary, they're running down 17th Street, like they did the Red Mile in 2004. I just don't know if it would reach. In Vancouver, would they be fired up, on Robson or something? I don't know, AK. I don't think it would be.
Well, remember, in 2010, it was in Vancouver. I think there was an added sense of patriotism simply because the Olympics were in Canada. If you remember in 2014, Patrick Sharp's going to join us in just a second, played for Canada, won gold. Those games were played at like 6 a.m. Like they were very early. I remember getting up. I was living in my parents' house and like going downstairs and seeing Carey Price shut out whoever, Sweden or the Americans. That wasn't the most exciting tournament simply because that Canadian team was so utterly dominant. They did not trail the entire tournament. That's what we were talking about in 2014. I don't think there was ever any concern that Canada would lose. And I think 11 years later now, it's not the same thing. I think in part because of the questions surrounding the goaltending, but I think in part because the other countries around the world have absolutely caught up. And we're not even seeing Russia in this tournament. We're not seeing Draisaitl play or David Pastrnak play for Czechia. So the Olympics next year, I think, will ratchet it up even further.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's going to be I think people are going to be very excited. I mean, I can't wait to hear what Patrick Sharp has to say about it as far as energy level and people excited about it.
Well, let's bring him in. The special advisor to hockey operations for the Philadelphia Flyers, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, Olympic gold medalist, one of the best-looking hockey players in NHL history, according to our Twitter, where people are, who is this stud coming on the show? It is Patrick Sharp here on OverDrive. Mr. Sharp, how are you?
Wow. Thank you, guys. What an introduction, especially the last part of it there. Thank you for that.
Our host is a compulsive liar, Sharpie. He's a compulsive liar.
I know it. I thought he was talking about you for a second there, O-Dog. I had to listen in.
Sharpie, I want to ask you something about these tournaments. When the coach comes in, everybody's got to get together quickly and kind of have it together out there. What does the coach say about, systems, or is it just don't make it look stupid out there, or is it pretty detailed stuff for a bunch of guys that have never been together?
It gets detailed, I suppose. Hockey Canada, they like the orientation camp in the off season leading up to years with events like this. We definitely had one in 2010 and 2014 as well, and that's a lot of taking pictures, hearing the details of the upcoming tournament, getting down to systems on how Canada wants to play, and it's really nothing revolutionary as far as team systems. Every group in the league is similar to the most, I guess, to a lot of the same extent, but a couple tweaks here and there. But for the most part, it just happens fast. You can prepare all you want in the off season, but much like this event that's starting up tonight, it just comes quick. You're playing a lot of games with your club team leading up to the event, 3 or 4 a week with a lot of travel, and all of a sudden you take a long flight and you're surrounded with some of the greatest players, definitely in the league, and playing for Team Canada. Man, there's some legends in the locker room the year that I got to play. But all of a sudden you're in a meeting with the coach and you're playing against Norway or Austria, whoever that first game was against, and it just happens fast. So I think the biggest thing I would advise the players on tonight is to play fast and trust your instincts, because at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of great players on the ice playing the game that they've always played.
So how do you control your emotions leading up to that? I mean, you can talk about playing fast, you can talk about, systematic play or just, settling in, but from a butterfly anticipation situation, was it like playing deep into the playoffs, Patrick? Was it like a Stanley Cup final? How did you treat it?
I felt a little more nerves with Hockey Canada than I did playing in the playoffs, even deep into the conference finals and the Stanley Cup finals. I just felt it was everything was different. There was new teammates, the training staff, the comfortability of being with your group wasn't quite there, and you can be pals and come together as quickly as you want. But at the end of the day, there's a ton of pressure on Canada, and that's what that event felt like for me. I had watched 2010. The Blackhawks send all kinds of players to the event in the Olympics in Vancouver, and I was glued to the TV watching my teammates perform at a high level. Kane and Taves were on entry-level deals. They were 21 years old, not even at the time. And, Keith and Seabrook played a big role as well. All across, every team had my teammates on it, and I was kind of in awe of how well they were doing at that level of competition. And then 4 years later, I had the chance to do it, and it felt very different than a playoff run. The group that you have in the NHL, you build together for years. Sometimes it's that particular season. Either way, it's 8 or 9, 10 months, but the teams that go deep tend to stay together for a long time. This Hockey Canada group was just a collection of great players that was put together, sent over to Russia, and said, hey, go bring back the gold medal, and if you don't, you're going to hear about it. So I felt a lot of pressure. It was hard to fit in, but as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, you're playing with some pretty great players, so don't try to overthink it. Just play hockey.
Patrick Sharp, our guest, of course, a member of the 2014 gold medal winning team for Canada. You've got a couple players on the Flyers, the team you're with now, that are members of Team Canada. Did you have the chance to give them any advice? Of course, I'm talking about Sanheim and Konechny.
Yep, two great players for Philly this season, no doubt. TK, he'll surprise some people up front. I think he's a well-rounded player that gives the Flyers energy every night. He plays at a high pace, and he's got an engine on him. He plays in all situations for us. I can see him being on the ice in any situation for Canada as well. He's great shorthanded. He's solid on the power play. He knows how to score goals. I think he's going to settle in nicely. Seems to be well-liked by all his teammates as well. So I could see TK fitting in and getting excited here in this tournament and playing really well. Sanheim on the back end is another player that, when I joined the Flyers last season, kind of learning the roster and going over the players, he was one that just jumped out night after night. For one, he can play both sides as a defenseman, which is really valuable in a short tournament like this, and his skating is world-class. For a defenseman of his size to be able to move as quickly as he can, I think he can be an effective player as well. So it's going to be a high pace, I think, and those two players can definitely handle it, and if not, push it at times.
Sharpie, how was the adjustment? I mean, you were a player when all these players are, when they're on their club teams, they're playing 22 minutes a night, first power play unit. What's that adjustment like or is going to be like for some of these guys where it's like limited ice time and this is going to be the McDavid and the McKinnon show and you're going to have to take a back seat a little bit, but you also have to find a way to contribute. You can't sit on your ass and say, oh, this is their tournament to win. You got to find a way to contribute.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can't be shrugging the shoulders and looking back at the coach wanting more power play time when you're on the ice. Are on the same team with some of the great players that are on this roster. No, that's the great thing about that Team Canada. I always felt growing up, I got 2 world championships as a pro, and then the one Olympics. That was my Team Canada career. But I always felt that just being on the roster was the most important thing, and the tournament kind of sorts itself out from there. And I look back, our captain Jonathan was the extra forward on the 2010 team, and as the tournament went along, he ended up being, I think, named MVP or top forward, whatever the award was at the end. And that's kind of a theme that you see throughout a lot of these tournaments. It's the depth of the team. It doesn't usually go the way everyone thinks it's going to go as far as individual players. It's always someone that surprises you because when you look at the rosters, there's great players at every position. So it is an adjustment, no doubt. All these players on Canada's roster are stars on their own club. That's why they're wearing the maple leaf on their chest tonight. So I don't think egos are going to be a problem when you put the jersey on. You figure out your role and you do the best you can.
Speaking of club team, how did you find, was it difficult to separate, playing for your country and then playing against a teammate, a guy you were out for dinner with, maybe 5 nights earlier, and he's playing for a different country and you got to go in and battle him in the corner, and it's not like preseason, it's not like training camp or in practice. I mean, you're playing for keeps. Did you have to find a way to maybe separate that type of emotion, or maybe have a handshake agreement? Hey, we'll talk after the tournament. How did you approach that?
Yeah, a little bit. You just shake hands, wish each other good luck before you go off the tournament. We had all kinds of guys on different teams, so it was weird seeing teammates from the club team in the Olympics, but then as far as my Team Canada guys going back to the NHL, yeah, it just goes back to normal. I think leading up to it caught me off guard. I remember, Noodles, we were in LA one time, days before the Olympic event, and Drew Doughty absolutely buried me with a hip check coming down the wall. I wasn't expecting it. I thought, maybe we're going to be teammates in a couple days. He's going to go easy on me. He just smoked me and really caught me off guard. So you're playing hockey, be ready for anything, but hockey players have that switch. They can turn it off pretty quickly.
Patrick Sharp, our guest. What do you remember about the off-ice component of the Olympic experience? Any big nights with the team in the Olympic Village? How did that work back in 2014?
Yeah, I was, nothing crazy. It was very professional. We're there to do a job, and we did it. And the way that the schedule worked out, it was like games every other night. There's always something to do. So there wasn't a whole lot of downtime once we got to Russia. But I don't want to say disappointed because it was the experience that we had. But watching how the city, the country, the province of British Columbia handled themselves when they hosted the Olympics in 2010, it was just Canadian, culture everywhere. It was a party. It was a festival. It was just such a great vibe to see from the outside. And then when you compare that to 4 years later in Russia, it was a long way to travel, and the facility was just, everything was brand new. Everything was just cement buildings. There was very little music. There was very little culture. It was just like a bunch of great athletes over there to do a job. And the time zone probably messed with some people back in Canada and North America a little bit as well. But, I wasn't disappointed because I had a great experience, and it was great to be with Team Canada. But definitely wish I would have been at the one 4 years earlier and had some great times in Vancouver.
Sharpie, how greasy, like you mentioned, you got teammates on your club teams that are playing on different teams in these types of tournaments. How greasy, did you ever hear a greasy comment from a teammate where you're like, if you chop that guy in the arm early, he'll disappear? Like, you ever hear anyone say anything like that about their own teammate? Or was that like stuff you just can't go down that road?
Like take away Kaner's time and space on the power play. Don't let him.
Or just,
set up,
yeah,
stuff
anything.
Like
Cross-check him early, he'll disappear. Anything like that.
Yeah, no, we had a pretty good team there. Our club team was winning a lot of playoff rounds and going deep, so we kept our secrets tight as we could. But you definitely learn a lot at those events, guys, no doubt. Sitting with some great players and watching them, you just pick up so much. We played Latvia one time, and I don't think we were ever in trouble. We were dominating the game. We had the puck all night. We were generating a ton of shots, but they scored a goal early on in the game, and it was off kind of a trick play, if you guys remember. I know it was a long time ago now, but basically it was a neutral zone face-off close to the Latvia bench. They won the draw, went D to D, and then the board side D just snuck into the bench, and then the benches were so long that a forward popped out basically in a breakaway situation. He went down and scored, and kind of caught us all off guard. But I bring that up because watching the NHL, the following week, once it started up again, Pittsburgh was playing and Crosby was on the ice, and they tried that exact same play. So you definitely pick up some tricks of the trade being around some great players, and I definitely learned a lot by playing with Team Canada.
So being in the midst of this Four Nations face-off break here, Patrick, you're the special advisor to hockey operations for the Flyers. I'm sure you keep in close contact with Danny Briere, who runs the operation there in Philadelphia. What is it like with regards to transactions, talking about trades, all the stuff NHL-wise while this break is going on?
Yeah, I'm more focused right now on our American League team. NHL group is kind of taking a break throughout the Four Nations. The players are all enjoying their time off or they're competing in the tournament. I had my eyes on the Beanpot up here close to Boston on Monday, and I'll be heading to Allentown, Pennsylvania to work with our American League group, High Valley Phantoms. So there's lots to do and lots to learn when you're in the role that I'm in right now. It's fun to be in that role, really enjoying it.
So I know the game has changed. Everybody's nutrition and, guys are a lot more dedicated to their craft. But, were there guys that you played with that maybe enjoyed their breaks a little bit too much, where you felt like, okay, this guy put on a 12-pack in the 10 days that he was gone? Like, I know I played with a few guys. I know we were talking about it yesterday. There was always one or two guys that you knew that they didn't go anywhere near the gym in the Olympic break or the All-Star break.
Yeah, no doubt. That happens all the time, and it's usually the same guys run themselves into trouble with the long breaks. It becomes a pattern, that's for sure. Yeah, I know we had a great defense group with the club team in Chicago. Keith and Seabrook were two of the best, and two very different body types and lifestyles on days off, let's put it that way. Dunks was constantly looking for an edge, training hard, taking great care of himself. Siebes was a great athlete himself, but I remember one break we had, Siebes enjoyed himself a little bit too much, and Dunks was really putting the work in. But as soon as the game started up, I think Siebes had a 3-point night that first game back, and Dunks was -2 or 3. So you never quite know what you're going to expect. The break is good for everybody. I'd say it's more of a mental break than anything, just to get ready for that playoff push and the end of the season coming up.
Well, Canada-Sweden tonight. I know you'll be tuned in, as will we. We can't thank you enough for taking the time, Patrick. Enjoy the time off, if you want to call it that, and best of luck the second half of the season for the Flyers.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
It's Patrick Sharp of the Flyers, 3-time Cup champ, Olympic gold medalist, joined us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Count on Maple Toyota for the right winter tire package for your Toyota. Trade in your old tires, buy a new set, get $40 back. Visit mapletoyota.com. Could probably use some fresh tires tonight on the road.
Don't even go on the road. Honestly, for the people that go on the road when it's a little bit snowy, don't act like you're from North Carolina or Florida. Just stay home, and you don't want to be going 10 miles an hour. Just stay home. Because you're dangerous. You're dangerous. You're like the blue hairs in Florida. You're dangerous.
Just be mindful on the road. Exactly. Like, that's the one thing I'm terrified sometimes, and I've got a pretty decent car in the snow, and you'll just see a Ford Focus driving 140 in the left lane beside you.
There's always one, man.
Tires are bald, fishtailing, and they're just gone.
Well, and that's exactly it. It's not so much about your own car. It's about the lunatics who are on the road who don't have the proper tires or are just completely aloof at the wheel on the phone or doing whatever. That's my concern
Florida
more than anything
driving
else.
in the snow. It's Florida. I lived in Florida, Noodles, so did you.
Yeah.
I had a stoplight in front of my house, and every time I stopped there going to the golf course, an elderly person just ran right through the red light, and it was just like it was Frogger out there. It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen, man. Just be careful out there, peeps.
Yep.
If you're not comfortable driving in the snow, stay home.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Very good advice on a snowy evening like tonight. 15 to 25 centimeters expected over the course of this Wednesday evening. It's a perfect opportunity just to stay home and watch hockey. Watch the Raps game. They play Cleveland tonight. It's on TSN. The 25-year Dunkiversary for Vince Carter is being celebrated. Paul Jones is coming up at 6:30. Dregs will be in studio in about 40 minutes as well. We have OverDrive arbitration still to come here in hour 2 of the show. Korolnek, McLennan, O'Neill here on TSN 4 and TSN 1050. Hour 2 of OverDrive continues here on TSN 4, up on TSN 1050 as well. Korolnek in for Hayes. Noodles is here. The O-Dog is here. Darren Dreger will be here in studio at 6 o'clock. So the Philadelphia Eagles will be celebrating the Super Bowl victory at a parade on Friday. Meanwhile, the Kansas City Chiefs still picking up the pieces from everything that went awry on Sunday in New Orleans. And the first Kelce Brothers podcast, New Heights, was released this morning, and Travis was speaking about his future in the NFL. I thought it was very, very interesting to hear the way he spoke about his outlook going forward. Why don't we take a listen to a little bit of it?
I know everybody wants to know whether or not I'm playing next year, and right now I'm just kicking everything down the road. I'm kicking every can I can down the road, and I'm not making any crazy decisions, but right now the biggest thing is just being there for my teammates and being there for my coaches, understanding, that there's a lot that goes into this thing. I've been fortunate over the past 5-6 years. I've played more football than anybody.
Yeah.
And it's because the people that are in that building and the fact that we keep going to these AFC championships and these Super Bowls, and that means I'm playing an extra 3 games more than everybody else in the entire league, and that's a lot of wear and tear on your body, and it's a lot of time spent in the building, focusing on your craft, focusing on the task at hand, every challenge that you set up for yourself, and it's that process can be grueling. It can weigh on you. It can make you better, and it can drive you crazy at the same time. And right now, it's one of those things where it was kind of driving me crazy this year. And I think that it happens as you kind of tail off towards the back 9 of your career.
My takeaway from that is that's game over. Like, I know that
so?
he absolutely. He could take a week and be like, God, I love football and I'm fired up and I'm going to go to the gym. But I've been in that headspace where that guy is. And I think when he's talking, like, it seemed like being at the building doing football things was, for the first time in his life, he felt like it was a job. And I think that's
Right.
probably when it's game over for him. And talking like he just continued to harp on the grueling. And it was like you didn't hear one thing about enjoyment. And I understand losing does that to you.
Right.
But listening to that, my guess would be that's curtains on his career. He could come back in a week and say, I'm playing, I'm fired up, I'm going to play 5 more years. But if we're going to isolate that alone, I would say that's game over.
It sounded like curtains to me as well, but I thought it's too fresh. I want to hear him speak a month from now. And I also, here's the other thing too.
Well, Jamie, the kicker for me was when he started describing how he was feeling all year.
Yeah.
Like, not just today, but he's like all year it was like a chore, and I'm like, that's pretty much game over because I've been there and I've been in that headspace.
Also, there is a scenario too. Like, his life has changed. It's a big, like, he's under a giant microscope now. He goes out for dinner with his girlfriend. It's a story. Like, to me, his life has changed. It's private. Not that he wasn't flying private before, but it's her jet. She's a billionaire. To me, there's so much more going on with his life that maybe football isn't number one. I predict, though, the one thing quickly, and AK, he might do the Gronk. He might take 4 months off, 5 months off, and then show up halfway through the season.
Interesting. Could do that, but life for him could be different too, because regardless of his standing as a tight end in the National Football League with the championships and the receptions, and some people holding him in the highest regard as a tight end in the NFL, you retire, man, you become Mr. Swift pretty quickly. I've seen that happen to people where they become they're like a famous athlete, and people start the kicker is, and why they move on from the relationship is because people started calling them Mr. Swift on the way into events, and that drives them crazy, man. So you go from Travis Kelce, the tight end, one of the greatest tight ends that ever played the game, you morph into Mr. Swift in a hurry if he doesn't play football.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
It's not that fun, man.
He is in a unique situation in that he's absurdly wealthy. He's done so well in his career. His podcast, they paid him $100 million over 3 years to do that podcast. Like, he's in incredible financial condition, and he's dating the most famous person in the world at the moment, perhaps aside from the President of the United States. And he's not that far behind. I mean, as far as famous people on our planet at the moment, Travis Kelce's pretty high up there and is very little to do with football.
His brother got 100 each for that podcast.
100 in total, so I guess 50
total.
each. Yes. Yeah, I know. It's good business. Very good business for new heights. So
I don't think he's too concerned about anything, man.
And just think about the wear and tear. And you're seeing it, too, in his play as well. His yards per reception the last 3 years has gone from 12.2 to 10.6 to 8.5. His game is not
decline.
What it once was,
decline.
which happens to everybody. Right. Except the Ovechkin and Crosbys and LeBrons and Tom Brady's.
I would love to also see the bidding war with the TV networks who all claim they're piss broke and they don't have any money to pay anyone. If that guy became available, he'd be making $50 million a year.
Well, his brother's raking it in at ESPN. I'm sure they'd love to pair the two together. Yeah,
I was at a restaurant and watching a football game, and every commercial was Jason Kelce.
Yeah.
Every commercial, it was like laundry, everything. It was like
everywhere.
Jason Kelce was the only commercial. I'm like, that guy must be making more money than when he played.
Oh, way more. Not even close. He is raking it in. And those guys, they're very likable. I think it's a credit to them, their character.
It is. They're regular dudes,
yes,
man. That's why they're so successful. People just want to hear them shoot the breeze.
Yes.
They're like the Manning brothers. That's really what they are. And they've got the big personalities. The only thing, like Jason Kelce, for me, is more recognizable, more visible in the media than he was as a player. Because his position was not a sexy position.
No, you're saying centers aren't sexy, Jamie?
Well, everybody's is, Jamie. There's no helmets. There's just your face is on TV every single day.
Who is the most famous center that you guys can think of?
Right now? That's a very good question.
Right. Like, I'm just saying, over in the history of time, in the last 30 years, who's the most famous
Not a
center?
bunch of guys popping up.
No, they're mutants. They're just guys that snap the ball and they get run over, and those guys are unique people. Jason Kelce he's like you said, he's everywhere. He's a beauty. It sounds like he's a beauty. He loves to party and enjoy himself, but he's now he's visible. Now you know what he looks like. I couldn't tell you what any centerman looks like in the National Football League.
All right, let's get to some overdrive arbitration. We ready, fellas?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Now, is that going to be a problem?
Yeah, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem for them. It's outrageous, egregious, preposterous.
OverDrive Arbitration.
I've been wanting a piece of them for years.
You think you got a case?
Your face is my case.
All right, let's stick with the Kansas City Chiefs theme here on OverDrive Arbitration. O-Dog, you are Patrick Mahomes of the Chiefs. You're awarded one more Super Bowl victory for the rest of your NFL career. Are you taking it?
I am going to take it, and it's recency bias. We talked about Travis Kelce with recency bias, the way he's feeling right now. The way that Mahomes got manhandled, and I know that not every team can put together a roster that will do that to Patrick Mahomes, but just watching that, I always go extreme in my thoughts. I'm like, maybe that's it for him winning the Super Bowl. Like, that's how extreme my thoughts go. When I see him just get pumped like that, I thought he played terrible, and I looked and I'm like, maybe that's game over for this run from the Chiefs. So he absolutely takes it. Everybody was so caught up in this fantasy world of him getting more Super Bowl wins than Tom Brady and him being the GOAT. And like I said, he could rip off the next two, and then you're like, what were you talking about? But as for right now, I think he'd sign off on just one more.
Totally with you. Totally with you. It's all about the AFC as a whole. You have to go through Lamar and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow every year. Like, if you get one more, that's awesome. That should be an incredible thing.
Mind you, AK, it's not those guys that cause them the ultimate problem. Like, he does mow through those guys every year for the most part. Burrow got him one time. Brady got him another time. I don't know.
I'm the other way, guys. I think there's probably a good chance he gets at least maybe one more in his career. He's only, 27?
29.
Sorry, 29. So he's got, let's call it 8 to 10 years. He's probably going to get one more. So would you take your chance to get 2 or 3? That's the way I'd look at it. Yes, you sign off on it, but wouldn't you bet on yourself? That's what these amazing athletes do. They bet on themselves all the time. So for me, I think he's saying no chance because I believe I'm going to get more. So that's why it's a no bueno for me.
All right, moving on. Noodles, you are Jordan Binnington, Team Canada's starter in the Four Nations face-off. You're awarded a goals against average of 2.75 for the duration of the tournament. Do you accept?
2.75, yes, because I think my team can get 3. So if that's on an average, that's, you're under 3, and I think that team is capable of scoring 3 or more. Now, the scary part is you've got low. The first 2 games you're at, hey, allowed 2. We won 6-2, 6-2. And then the average out, hey, you allow 5 or 6 in a game where we only needed you to allow 2. 2.75 is a bit high, but I'm on the average, I'm taking it because I would bet that Team Canada can score 3.
Very interesting. And I think you're right. I mean, Canada should be able to score 3, but look at that Swedish defense tonight that they have to go up against. Littered with studs. Philip Gustafsson is a very talented goalie. He's in net for Sweden. The Americans, same thing, really, on the back end and in goal with Hellebuck, who's a literal monster. I think you do take it, though. And I think
they're not planning on starting Allmark, Jamie?
Great question. Why? Why did they go with Gustafsson over Allmark?
Well, the one obvious reason, AK, is because he's played half a game in the last 40 games.
That is true.
He played 2 games last week. You're right, but he played Tuesday, Saturday. I think they just, Gustafsson has been healthy, and you're right. They might have looked at it and said, you have played 2 games in the last 55 days, I believe it was, so or close to it. So you look at it, that's 2 games in 2 months. I think you go with the guy who's been playing regularly and played pretty darn well. I mean, Gustafsson's really come into his own as a goaltender, but I was a bit shocked that Allmark wasn't getting the nod. I mean, if Markstrom was healthy, he's the guy. So it's really a choice between the other two.
Maybe Stevie Stais phoned the Swedish Hockey Federation and said, if you put my guy in net, I'll be the ultimate warrior coming up to the press box, running into the ring, and I'll go absolutely crazy on you guys. You never know what happens.
That's true.
I do think for goaltenders in this tournament, like Binnington and Gustafsson, Hellebuck, I presume starts tomorrow for the Americans. Of course he will, and UC Saros for the Finns. You could very well just see 4 goalies throughout the entire tournament because you need points right off the bat. And unless your goalie stinks up the joint, if Binnington were to get lit up tonight, yes, I think they would go to Adin Hill or Montembeault.
And that's what you don't. That's the only thing you don't want to do. Jamie played the position, and he knows how important the position is. The last thing you ever want to do is have a team that's so jacked up to play together, everybody's dialed in, and you stink the joint out, and people are starting to talk about your chances of succeeding because of your performance, man. That's nightmare fuel. Fuel.
I'd be concerned about it, but I do think maybe that's a mini Jerry's we can do later or something. Are we going to just see 4 goaltenders, one for each organization, for each country? Or are we going to see it, 5 or 6 over the tournament.
That is interesting. Like, you would think Allmark probably gets in.
Let's do the over-under on 4.5 goalies. How many do you think we're going to see during the Four Nations?
I'm taking the over.
Yeah, maybe 5.5 or even 6 point. No, probably 5.5 is the number.
5.5 is the number that AK, you're a degenerate, and so is Hayes. You both gamble, and you know
You're
it.
right.
So,
you're right. I don't disagree.
So you would be taking the 5.5 number, and I think you'd probably hammer the over.
I think so. I think you're going to see Hill and you're going to see Allmark at some point, and maybe the Finnish guy in the third game.
I don't like that talk. I do not like that talk heading into
Blanking
game
it?
one. I don't like it.
I am sitting on a bunch of Binningtons 60-1 to win tournament MVP, so let's hope that comes up. Could maybe buy a new car if that were to hit. Unlikely, but you never know. Max Scherzer, speaking of buying new cars, maybe he did just that with his $15.5 million from the Toronto Blue Jays. Pitchers and catchers report tomorrow down in Dunedin for Toronto. If I am Max Scherzer and I was awarded a guarantee of 18 starts in 2025, would I take it or leave it? I would absolutely take it if I was Max Scherzer at age
18 starts. That's it.
Yes, I would absolutely take it. I think you need to look at Max Scherzer as a guy who.
Just tell me this before you get into your answer.
Yep.
What is the, like, I'm not talking about wins. I'm talking about average starts for a guy in the rotation who's a heavy hitter.
Yeah,
like Scherzer. So what would the average be?
Well, and I guess I'm not including the playoffs, but I mean Scherzer's probably the 5th starter for the Jays. You have Barrios and Bassett and Gausman.
How many
and Bowden
times does
Francis.
he go out there? 20 or 30?
I think if they ran through it, the 5-man rotation, probably 31 times. That would be the idea. But he's 41 years old. You cannot possibly expect Max Scherzer.
Sometimes they're going to go to him and say, "Hey, listen, old man, you're not going out there today."
The LA Dodgers are expected to run out a 6-man rotation for the entire season with
one guy's
Kershaw and one guy's Kershaw, one guy's Ohtani, right? They have very measured approach when it comes to their rotation. They don't want these guys racking up 180 innings.
This is what Kershaw is going to do this year. If Dave Roberts needs him to throw a curveball for one last strike in a game, he's going to say, "Clayton, can you rip one curveball off for me? That's all you got to do tonight." I can't see him doing much more than that.
I'm with you. And I think Scherzer's in a very similar boat. This is a guy who dealt with a ton of injuries last year. Remember, he got hurt in Toronto. Pitching for Texas, and you hope he comes to camp, and you hope he looks vintage. I mean, a couple of years ago, the guy was a total stud, and maybe at age 41, he could conjure up some of his old magic. Speaking of which, Tiger Woods, O-Dog, your Tiger, unfortunately had to withdraw from this week's Genesis at Torrey Pines. You're awarded to make the cut at 2 of the 4 major championships this season. Are you taking that?
Are you? Of course I'm taking that.
This guy never plays. He's got the ass
played all 4
strap
majors last year.
Dude, I don't know what's up with that guy, and God bless his family when you lose somebody like that. He might be feeling it. But as far as the golf is concerned, I don't think it's there anymore, man. I think he's a simulator golfer now. Him making the cut at any elevated event or anything, I just don't see it happening anymore. And I know our boss is a diehard. Diehard. Our boss thinks he's going to win the Masters this year.
Absolutely. He's certain of it. He is certain of it.
That's what we're talking about. He thinks he's going to win the Masters this year.
No,
at 49 years old.
I don't think he's
Dude, he ain't making the
that.
cut, and it won't be close. Like, he's not making the cut. He cannot, first of all, he cannot walk up and down that golf course. And second of all, he's not good enough to make the cut. Like, he's just not good enough. And I say it all the time. It's the same nonsense. On Tuesday, he tells everybody, "I can win this week." And then on Friday, walking off the green, he goes, "I never play. That's why I was so garbage out there." So it's like, dude, what is it? It's one or the other. Tuesday, I can win. Friday, I missed the cut because I never play. What the hell did you expect out of me? It's like, can't be both, brother.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's absolutely the reality. And the subject of that simulator golf, TGL, did you see last week when Tommy Fleetwood was playing and the divot registered and not the golf ball on the simulator?
Well, dude, they're going to run into a problem on live television.
Sure.
That big giant screen's just going to go blank one night, and then they're going to be standing around, and I feel bad for the hosts that are running that.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it was tough enough when Mark Masters dropped yesterday and didn't answer the phone. If that screen goes dark and there's nothing going on, you got a serious problem on your hands.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen at least one time.
No, I think so. That the TGL is not going on for that much longer, right? And we're looking forward to, the Genesis is a good tournament, a really good field. We're 50-something days till the Masters.
Yeah,
we're getting
golf's
close.
going to start getting cooking. We're Florida Swings not far away into March, and then there's some pretty serious tournaments coming up. Love the and I love the fact that this weather is going away soon, and we'll be golfing ourselves, AK.
Are you sure about
not
that?
That soon, sadly, not that soon. But
Danny, I brought this guy out
mid-February.
golfing. I brought this guy to Weston once, and on the 9th hole, I got out of my cart and I was walking to the green to mark my ball, and a golf ball came out of the sky. It went right by my nose hairs, landed right in front of my toes, and he was looking back in the fairway. The guy didn't say 4. He almost killed me.
I didn't see you, man.
Dude,
of course I remember
insane.
that. I didn't see you. The ball was in the air. It was a tight, high draw soaring through, and then I see you walking slowly to the hole. I'm like, is that going to hit? Oh, and it avoided you. Very precise with my irons. You know that.
I just can't imagine how much I would have lost it if that hit me right in the coconut. I would have went ballistic if I was still conscious.
No, rightfully so. Sorry about that, buddy. Sorry about that.
All right.
And that was the last time we teed it up. Maybe that was for a reason. That's my guess. That concludes OverDrive Arbitration. Darren Dreger will join us in studio in about 15 minutes. Hour 2 of OverDrive continues on TSN 4 and TSN 1050. OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Korolnek in for Hayes, McLennan, O'Neill around the table. Darren Dreger will be here in about 10 minutes to tee up Canada-Sweden. That game tonight at 8 o'clock. The Americans play the Finns tomorrow, and there was a lot of people, guys, talking about that team picture of the United States. Not sure if you saw the two individuals who...
Brock Nelson?
The Brock Nelson picture for sure, but can you explain, Jamie, as a goaltender, what is going on with Connor Hellebuck relative to his boy Kyle Connor on the left here? And if you're listening via podcast or via radio, Kyle Connor...
Gotta be the equipment.
He's got the giraffe neck going.
He's got a long neck. Kyle Connor. And Hellebuck, he's crimpled up there in his equipment. What's going on there?
I honestly, I thought that was... We talk about AI all the time and all of that. But that was AI or something messing with it, because it was almost like, Hellebuck looked like he shrunk into his gear. And there's no way that's Kyle Connor's neck. Like that, it's a foot and a half long.
It really is.
I think it's just a bad angle of the camera. And the other one was Brock Nelson. That looked digitally altered. He looked like he was 74 years old. I don't know what was going on.
I never saw this.
Oh, dog, you got to see this picture.
Yeah, it's wild.
It is. He looks like a shriveled up old man in there, and I don't know what's going on. He's skinny. He's very lean and tall, but he's got gray hair. It looked like Brock Nelson 20 years from now in a reunion jersey. I don't know. I don't know if we can pull it up, or maybe after the break at the 6 o'clock hour. We got to go through these pictures because they're insane. I mean, and Austin Matthews, he was making some noise with his picture too, because it's the salad is starting to creep out of there. And
he might need to go to Turkey soon, a visit to Istanbul. There's Brock Nelson. He does look skinny in that. You're right.
That looks like a 1942 hockey card. It's like, hey, this is, Jim Johnson. It just is so random. It doesn't.
That guy looks
look
like
real.
some lanky guy on Bay Street that plays beer league on Thursday nights.
Exactly. That doesn't look real. I think their pictures were messed up somehow. I have no idea what happened to them.
I think it's real, Jamie. I think it just has got a weird look to it, man. It's just... I don't know.
Filter?
I don't know. It's just the way his face is angled. It's a weird pic, man.
Well,
but he looks old.
Oh, he does. He does. Well, he's got some grays. We got some grays cooking over here too. I think we all are getting there in our lives for sure. But we talk about guys who could make statements with big tournaments. We've mentioned guys like Marner and Erik Karlsson. How about Brock Nelson, pending UFA? A guy I'm sure is looking for a big payday into his mid-30s. And he doesn't have a very prominent role on Team USA. He's playing on the fourth line. But that guy could do some damage in the tournament. You wonder what that could do for him going forward.
I got one for you, too. Mika Zibanejad.
Oh, he needs it.
He's had a dreadful season for the Rangers.
Dreadful
Right?
playoff last year too.
Like considering the standard that he set, high scoring, all of that type of stuff. That's a guy, if he has a big tournament, maybe, especially, gets the Rangers on a roll down the stretch, something like that. I don't know. But that one, I kept thinking of players going through the roster. I'm like, that Zibanejad needs a tournament to turn a season around.
Oh, yeah, and you look at Sweden down the middle. Zibanejad and Elias Pettersson would be their top two centers. And you guys, I'm not sure if you heard what Pettersson had to say earlier today, talking about some of the anticipation for this tournament. But here is Mr. Pettersson of Team Sweden this morning.
You play against top centers all the time, night after night. So it's not like that's new to you necessarily, but when there's so many on every
Well, it's
team,
definitely new that all of them are on the same team now. So, no, but it's exciting. Excited how we're going to perform against them, but a little nervous in a good way. It's just excited for puck draft.
Two things on that, Cat. The first time I've seen him smile in a year. I'm not kidding. He generally looked like he had a smile on his face, and he was happy to be there. And that's a matchup that has not been touched on a lot. When the USA plays Sweden, him and Miller are going to be going head-to-head at center ice. That will be fascinating to watch.
It will be. Yeah, I agree. Like, what if Miller just cross-checks him right off the draw or something? Something like it could get ugly.
Yeah,
like,
something
we're
could
all
get
gonna be
nasty
watching.
there.
We're all going to be watching.
Magnifying
them, right?
glass on those two for sure.
Big time.
Yeah. That game will be something I'm very looking forward to. Are those hats nice? That hat that Pettersson was wearing, is that a nice hat?
I'm getting a whole lot of them. I'm getting all 4 countries, and I'm getting a bag of stuff to bring home. I love it all.
Okay, I think that's a very wise move, O. Thank you very much. Great to see you for the 2 hours. You'll be back tomorrow.
I'm going. My car has already started. I'm getting in my car to try to get there by 8:00.
It's not that bad yet.
that.
It's not that bad. I just looked outside during the break, but it's getting worse. So drive safe, buddy.
All right, boys. Take it home in the last hour.
You got it. That's the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill. Myself and Noodles will hold it down for the final hour. Darren Dreger will be in studio in moments. This is OverDrive on TSN 4, soon to be up on TSN 2.